let's start then. So I just say one or two things as we start. So thank you, really. Thank you for joining us on this hour. We're going to talk about culture. There's really a couple of people that's joining us that knows possibly more than me even on this topic. And then we all have our own unique experiences of culture in different contexts. So please, what we share is maybe just limited from a specific context, from a specific point of view, and many of you I'm fully aware would be able to join in with quite a lot. So we're going to just one or two things. Ilse is opening the chat side to things. So if you want to ask a question, please do that. Just type it in there. If there's something specifically you can ask, we'll see if we can try and get to some of the questions as well. Then Ilse Claassen, you've heard her speak. So if something goes wrong with my internet and the line drops or something and I'm gone, Ilse is going to take over for a minute until I'm back. So you're welcome also to ask her any questions. I think she pretty much knows all my slides by now. So she will just carry and fill in. So she's my best on the bench replacement player for this conference. Okay, so feel free to just she'll take the lead in from that. Let me see, was there any other thing? No, I think there's not really much else. I think it's rules. If I forget something, just type it or remind me. Then just make sure my chat's also open here to see it. Okay, there we go. So I think let me start with maybe a first thought or two. I think one of my very first thoughts I would like to share is I realize that we're living in, I think, what we just can call paradoxical times. And when I refer to that, we are entering a time frame right now where certain things are happening exceptionally fast and other things are happening exceptionally slow. Some things are, we're sitting alone in a room, but yet we can speak to thousands of people. So it's really a paradoxical time, I think, that we're living in. And I think we've went through the first week or two or three, which was sort of a romantic idea. We were still had a lot of adrenaline pumping. It was this new thing. Hey, we locked in our houses and all these new meetings, etc. But it literally within about 2 weeks or so, I think that romantic side to the lockdown was wearing off. And my experience was in like almost the start of the third week, I picked up that a lot of people now realizes that, listen, this is the fun and games is almost past. The funny elements of it in the beginning, it was great fun to have these meetings, and now everybody is at least dressed neatly on top, but 10 to 1 with some shorts and slippers or whatever. So I actually said part of our values, one of our big values at King Price is fun with a little madness. We make sure people must have fun when you build a culture, you build people engagement fun. So what I would like to know, just by show of hands or whatever way, is how many of you also, this really has become my favorite shoe. So this is my new working shoe. Who else is joining me in that also, this is your new office. Stefan, you guys on the farm, you guys must still wear your boots because you must work. But I think this really, there's a couple more. Yes, I see some other people also. That's it.
If you can show us, it will be great.
So I think so many things has changed, and I think this paradoxical times is going to challenge us. And as I was preparing actually for today, and I went through some of our definitions that we've been holding dear to regarding what culture is, I realized, but our very definitions of culture are being challenged. And I'll get to some of that and to some of those slides, etc. So we'll get to some of those things as we go through. Language is always something that fascinates me, because the moment you have a very good descriptive narrative of what's happening, then your mind can start grabbing a hold of what's happening with you, in you, around you, etc. So I think we're going to see a bunch of new words coming through. We're going to see new concepts, and it's just going to be the way for us to try and understand and make sense of what we actually understand of the world around us. I remember reading an article once, and somebody said, what is the very first memory you have as a human being? How young were you? If you have to think back and usually we get somewhere between the age of 2 or 3, 4, maybe somewhere there, you start recalling your very first memory that you can remember. And this specific psychologist wrote a thing. She says the reason that's your first memory is because that is around about the age you had language to describe something that you experienced. So it's almost like language links with your thinking. So if I can get vocabulary going, understanding this new norm, then I can make more sense out of it. So I think that's something we got. So I got 2 new words. They are both in Afrikaans. I think the first one I'm going to classify as a bilingual word. Okay, so the 2 words which I actually got from the lady that writes the Afrikaans handbooks for most schools in South Africa, so it's a very official source, this, was Corona Mona. So Corona Mona is people that can't stop moaning since the Corona thing started. And then she gave us another one, which is in Afrikaans, and I'll give you my own version of the English. And the English people, Colin, Lindsay, you guys can check me if this is a legit English word. But we're making a new one. It's starting today, okay? So the Afrikaans one was uncoded. And dit is om aan te hou kou terwyl jy by die huis is. Jy kan nie ophou kou nie. So the English one I thought out this morning is, I think we're going to call it contiguity. Is that okay for the English people out there? Contiguity, to continue to chew. You just can't stop chewing. Okay, and I think those are 2 things that's really relevant for us. So that's maybe just a little bit on the lighter side of new words, but I want to really encourage you in your new time. I think we're going to look for new language, new paradigms, because those language gives paradigms and forms the new paradigms we want to get into. Okay, so I think my very first thought I would like to get to today, and I'm going to share a little bit. Now I must. Okay, let me get this screen going. Hopefully everybody can see the slides in front of you. So I shared fun with little madness as one of our very first values. I think we've done something on that. And let me just sort of start with, I decided to actually start with the most well-known statement, which I usually don't do, but I'm going to use it for now. And that's the statement says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think because we're talking about culture today, it's a very well-known statement. I think Peter Drucker was actually the first guy that really coined it. But on this topic of culture eating strategy for breakfast, I think what is very important, what we have to realize is we always say that we only agree with this statement about 50%, because culture can only eat strategy when culture is dysfunctional, when it's not healthy. But when culture is healthy, culture should enable strategy and empower strategy. And I think that's what we really want to get to today, is to say that how can we build cultures that empower your strategic outcomes that you have planned for your organization? And that's really what we'd like to get to. And I realize that for many leaders, this is the biggest challenge now. It's going to be able to get the balance right between culture, strategy, and structure. And as we move into a new time frame, these three will all three be redefined. Our strategies are being redefined at the moment. Our structures are going to be majorly redefined at the moment, and our cultures will be redefined. So I think on both those things, the role of leadership is going to be to create a great balance between those three elements. I'm not going to go into any detail of that. Just wanted to mention, I think, those three elements. What is your strategy? What is your structure going to look like? And what is your culture? And it must be a balance between them. Like we said, culture might eat strategy for breakfast, but structure might eat culture again for lunch. Is just a saying that we've made up here at King Price as well. For those who have been on a tour, I just want to get a quick foundation. And I think, the role of leadership is going to be massive in this time. Those are the three CEOs of Microsoft. On my left of the screen is Bill Gates, and then we've got Satya Nadella in the center, and we've got Steve Ballmer to the right. But under those three leadership, that was the share price. That's how it was influenced under their leadership. And right in the year 2000 is where the first leadership transition took place. I think the role of leadership is going to be so highlighted during this time. And we see that even as we watch, I try and skip early mornings. I try and quickly skip through the 4 or 5 or 6 main TV news channels. And it's very evident how the different leaders in the world are handling this differently. And I think leadership is going to play such a vital role in times like this. We always say that in times of crisis, everybody looks to the leader. Everybody looks to the leader. They want to see, is the leader calm? I know I do the same. I'll phone our CEO, I'll phone Gideon. I say, Gideon, just tell me, how do you feel? Are you okay? Are you calm? Are you worried? What's your state of mind? Because if I know what your state of mind is, I know whether I should also run or can I stay, type of a. So everybody's going to look at you as the leader, and I'm going to look at how are you going to handle this? How are you going to go through this? So I don't want to go too much into this. I think I'm going to skip a little about insiders, because we talk about insiders and creating insiders when we create culture. That's maybe a very important topic totally on its own. But I think one thing that Satya Nadella said when he took over Microsoft was this. He said, fixing the culture was my #1 priority. And right now it's going to be, wherever your organization is, I think the one maybe positive that we're going to be able to do is many cultures can actually press a reset button during COVID. So we don't know when everybody's going to be back in the offices. For us as a company, we're thinking maybe December, or 10-1, not before December, everybody will be back. So 10-1 only next year. I think we have a maximum amount of 300 people, over 1,000 people that we can take back. So and literally as we speak, everything is uncertain. We all know that. So I think it's what we realized and what we're busy actually working with as a strategy is how to, even though we've put so much into our culture, is how can we press the reset button on the culture as people start coming back to the office. And I think this is a great opportunity for many companies, is to redefine what it could look like, should look like, want it to look like, and what should that culture have in it when we get back to whatever the future holds for us. I think maybe on that topic, I'll get to the adaptive cultures just now. So just want to make, I think this is something we've so many times seen, that toxic people can kill culture slowly, but toxic leaders can kill culture overnight. I think it's a very, very important element. And like I said, it's going to put a great emphasis on leadership during this time. Those of you who haven't seen this, I think this is Jim Stengel's research, which he did on the top 50 companies. He identified that it was highly purpose-driven. Now, something that we also really classify very importantly this time is purpose. And I think purpose is one of the big values that's keeping our teams together. It might be keeping your organization together at this time where people are working remotely and they're not in an office. So the question is, am I still committed to the same purpose, whether I'm in the office or whether I'm at home? Am I still committed to the same purpose that the organization has had? Is the purpose still the same? If your purpose changes during this time, that's very possible. But I think purpose is something that really can unite people during an uncertain time like this. We still want to achieve the same goals. We still want to achieve certain great things that we've identified for ourselves. So I think the element of purpose, very, very important. Just on the graph, so Jim Stengel did this research to show how companies that was connected to that red line, the high sense of purpose and a culture of improving their people's lives, outperformed the rest of the S&P 500 companies with almost 400% difference almost there during the years 2000, 2011. And the one dip you'll see there is also, of course, the dip during the economic crisis. Okay, so.
Marno, sorry if I can just interrupt you. There's a question on, Don asked, on the toxic people can kill culture slowly. Do you think lockdown and work from home has slowed organizational bad apples down?
Don, it's a good question. Hopefully, yes. That's my feeling, and I'll tell you why. Because they're isolated, and a bad apple needs people around him to influence, and needs the people to influence negatively. So at the moment, luckily, that negative element is being isolated. So it's a very good thing to actually, I think, pick up on in this time, because during this time we can actually ask, and if we identify people like that, is how do we want to bring them back? How and when and what are there a couple of interventions we should actually design when we bring our people back to the office? We're thinking about literally a 90-minute session that we're going to put all our staff through as we return, start slowly implementing back. So we're going to call it maybe a culture capture or something like that. It's just how to reignite the culture, re-emphasize the values and things like that. So I think those are quite important elements, and it's a very good question, I think, that asking there. Yeah.
Another question is on the Culture It strategy. Do you believe that all your employees know where they fit into the business, their task, and how they contribute to the overall business strategy?
I think so. I hope so. We obviously trying to build that. Now and then you do pick up some people that you think, so what do you think you're doing here? You know, we thought it was quite clear, or the mandate was quite clear. So every now and then you do pick up people that's not as clear on it, but hopefully it is a very valid point. It is something obviously one should give a lot of attention to make sure that people are very clear on the greater purpose, their own function within the organization, and their role in the organization. So it is something that is very important and must be very clear. So yeah, okay. This slide says something to me about, I think, what many people. This is a piece of research that we got from the UK, and which said that 87% of CEOs admits that culture is a very competitive advantage. But only 19% could say that they actually have the right culture. 28% only said that they understand their culture, that they actually have an understanding of it. But more than 50% said they are attempting to change their culture. I think that is quite an important element of this. I think this shows the emphasis of where people are saying, listen, we want to work on our culture, we want to change our culture, we need to work on it. That gives you an indication of what CEOs said in the UK. So just a very important thing. I think this is a statement we've really tried to embrace. We took it from this guy, Chris Caposello from Microsoft. He said, we went from a culture of know-it-alls to a culture of learn-it-alls. This is, I think, one of my main points I want to really share with you guys this morning is talking about adaptive cultures. So adaptive cultures is the one word we like to use versus unadaptive cultures. So first of all, you need to have an embrace, do we know it all, or can we learn it all? Can we continue to learn new things? And I think that is a very, very important element that we want to embrace. We'll touch maybe a little bit more on the growth mindset, but I think we are challenged right now, every single one of us, to open up our minds for whatever the world is, what the new things will be. You will not be able to embrace new things if you don't embrace a growth mindset. Now, this takes me to this graph that everybody has seen. It's called the law of diffusion. I've seen many things written about it, but I just want to highlight one or two things. The law of diffusion basically says, and I think there's a really key, it says this is basically the way people experience or handle change when change is introduced into a system, or when anything new is introduced. You have that 2.5% of innovators, and that's maybe the small group of 3 or 4 or 5 of you, or 10 maybe, that got together, says, guys, let's think about something new, let's be innovative, let's have a new strategy, a new product, a new approach, whatever. There's that 13.5%, so the two groups together will take you to 16%. Now, what is very important to note is 16% is actually the place that you want to get to. Once you get to 16%, you can switch the whole company around. Because the moment you have those early adopters with you, the early majority follows quite easily. What is very important about this graph that I would like to give some advice on is, don't waste your energy on the 50% that's the late majority or the laggards. Don't even spend an ounce of your energy on them. Those are not people that you convince. Those are people that eventually follow because their options are becoming less. That's just what happens. So those are not people that you are going to preach to change their thinking or their minds. Your energy must go into the first 16%. 16% actually is a critical mass when you look at the law of diffusion. So why this helps us is, as we might as leaders introduce a lot of change in your organization going forward, you want to know where not to waste your energy, because energy is going to be something you really want to preserve, I think, in the times going forward. So make sure, who are those people, who are those early adopters with you, who are the innovators with you, hopefully, and I'm assuming I'm putting you all in that front bracket there, at least in the top 50%, who are the early majority. And I think some of these things are changes. Yes, you are going to lead in your organizations, but to a certain degree, we're literally waiting for the president every week, once or twice, to give us the new news. And then the question is, how long does it really take us to adopt? How long does, so certain things we're going to be led through, certain things you will lead and you will take it through. But focus your energy on the front 16%, the following 34%. As you continue to talk about those things, they will follow. Don't waste your energy on the 50% at the end. They will eventually come, but don't let them steal your energy. That's not, leaders are not called to, if I may say, waste their energy at that place. Lindsay and Greg, I don't know if Greg is even, I haven't seen Greg, John, I don't know, maybe Greg is there, but Lindsay, I just want to give you guys also recognition. This is although this is the Cochrane Heskett study, this is, I got this from the Pacific Institute from Greg and Lindsay. And I think I really like this slide, because this shows results when we compare unadaptive cultures with adaptive cultures. So this was a study done by Cochrane Heskett. The book and the material is open to the public and everything. So they did this study over an 11-year period on corporate culture, and it was. I'm hearing another voice. Is it just me? Okay, sorry. It said that people that had an unadaptive culture over an 11-year period, they had a revenue growth of 166%. Their stock price increased with 74%. Their workforce was 36%, but their net income only grew with 1%. Now, if we look at what the adaptive cultures did, so the adaptive cultures, their revenue grew with 682%. Their stock price was 900%. Their workforce was 282%. And their net income, just look at the massive, massive difference there. So I think one of the words, without going into detail, that I really want to introduce is, never think of your culture as good or bad or right and wrong. Ask yourself rather the question, how adaptive is my culture of my organization? Am I adaptive to make changes? That is the right way versus being unadaptive. Adaptive cultures have a growth mindset or an open mindset. Unadaptive cultures have limiting beliefs, closed mindset, fixed mindset. So those are the things just to quickly mention on that. Okay, so this is our definition. I mentioned earlier that I realized our very definition of culture is being challenged. And as I was reading through this again last night and this morning, I realized, so on that slide, let's look at maybe the second and the third bullet, which is just the definition of social culture. The first definition is the biological definition of what a culture is. So the second bullet there says it's the totality of socially transmitted behavior patterns, arts, beliefs, institution, all those things. Then the third one says culture is learned and shared within social groups and is transmitted by non-genetic means. So all of a sudden I realized, as I was reading literally the textbook definition of what social culture is, well, the problem is they've just took away all social groups now, and they've just taken away the whole way social groups function. So the way in which social groups are functioning and are going to function for months ahead has just been radically changed. So what is going to influence, and what will the new definition in the dictionaries maybe even look like? Now, yes, we can say the online culture is going to influence us, etc., etc. But I think this brings us to a place where we realize how it actually connects with my very next point, is a value-based culture. I realized really early on in this lockdown that our values are going to play a more and more and more important role than ever. And certain values might even change. I was saying to Ilse earlier, I think the value of trust must be right up there at the moment, of trusting people, being trustworthy. Can people trust me? Am I a trustworthy employee? So something like that's going to be tested to its max, literally, I think, at the moment as we go forward. So I was actually considering, as I was reading the definition and thinking about this whole thing of just value-based culture, I was literally thinking, well, are our values going to stay the same in an organization? Very possibly. A lot of companies are going to say, listen, we have to revisit our values because the outcomes have changed, or maybe our purpose is changing. Maybe our way of what we want to do, our whole strategy is changing. We're not going to be able to reach people and reach towards our clients and whoever we want to reach in the way we used to, but we've just found out there's new ways, different ways, maybe even much more effective ways. So I think it might be a time the next couple of months to really revisit your own values and ask yourself, are there other values, newer values, or values that we sometimes talk about a value shift. So values might be shifting as well. Maybe a value that was like your number 4 or 5 or 6 one is moving straight to the top, and maybe there's 1 or 2 that's become irrelevant. So have a look maybe again through your organizational values. Just ask yourself that question: is it time to relook at them, change them, just revisit it? I think it will be a good time at least for teams to just discuss it again and say, guys, let's just discuss going forward, what is it going to look like? What is it going to be like, etc., etc. So I think so I gave you one. I want to show you just this one picture. This was Gideon's office when we started. I remember, I think Colin, one of you two guys met him during that time. I don't know if that was really fun or a little bit of rebellion, just to show all our shareholders, because they forced him to sit in a closed office. He doesn't like an office. Those of you who've met him know. So he decided to decorate his office with every possible toy he could get. Now, he didn't work in that suit. Just, it's not Gideon that's sitting there, but still, I think for us, still, work must be fun. It's fun with a little madness is one of our values. So I just wanted to mention that. Because I want to stop sharing just all those slides for now. Just want to see. Okay, there I go. Just want to quickly have a look at a couple of things. So I think we spoke about that. I think the one thing then, maybe a last thing, just, and we can touch on the element just again on the definition of culture. I think that is something we, just see, where is it again? I've changed some of my slides around. There it is. I think the question now is, and it even refers to the earlier question, I think you said that Don asked, is exactly that thing of, so certain people has been isolated, and if culture is learned and shared within social groups and transmitted by non-genetic means, our thinking, etc. So how will we transfer the new thinking models then more effectively? How will we talk to that, and how will we cause that change if there's going to be much less social activity? Just to give you an idea, for example, one of the things we're looking at King Price right now is we realized, as we were planning, Ilse, myself, and Mariska, we were looking at it and saying, we're going to have a threefold strategy to implement our new culture. We're going to have a strategy to implement the culture of those people who's going back to the office. Then we're going to have a strategy of people not going back to the office, which is going to be totally different. And we're going to have a strategy how we re-enter people into the office. So it's almost 3 different strategies with 3 different timelines and approaches to get that right. So I think that's going to be a couple of new things, and none of us has done it. We're all new regarding that. So I think those are things we're actually busy writing. We're trying to see if we can come up with something we can actually help some people with as well, and help other companies and organizations with as we exit. So I think those are the things that we seriously are gonna look at. Yeah, and then maybe a last thought just on the role of leadership. A question that we've got, I was hosting, or somebody asked me to speak on a similar forum a week ago, and a question that I realized was keep coming out was, they kept asking us, so Marno, you guys had this thing at King Price where there was unlimited leave, and also we have a 50,000 Rand leaving bonus in month 1, which is now a difficult one to uphold, because if somebody joins us now, we haven't even seen them, and maybe they want to leave because of the culture, and say, no, it's just because of the culture in your own house, our culture, why you're leaving. So that might be something we're going to put on pause as well for a while. We're going to have to have a look at that. But the question that came out is, Marno, what do you think about 10-to-1 new software or mechanics or measurements? How are you going to measure effectiveness of your people at home? And I guess it's a relevant question, but just coming from us, this is a very King Pricey answer, okay? This is guys who don't like rules and all sorts of things. We realized the thing that I would like to warn against is we've never had a culture of micromanaging people. And we would not like to embrace a micromanagement culture now. So yes, it's going to be a challenging time. It's going to be, so how do we look at those things? I guess pretty much similar to the past, as in, let's try and just make sure the outcomes are there, the targets are met, etc. But I can't see us trying to go into a thinking and embrace a culture of micromanagement. And I think there's a very important thing here on that very point, is differentiate between what are rules or laws and what is culture. If you start implementing micromanagement and things like that, a whole new culture is going to start, and you're going to start breeding it, and it's going to start forming. And before you know it, you're back in a very intense micromanaged culture, which I don't think most people want. We don't want it. So yes, it's something we'll have to navigate. We'll have to really have a look at as we go forward. But I just want to put your attention to that and saying, be aware of whatever rules or laws you're introducing during this time to make sure it doesn't bring forth an element in your culture that you actually don't want. And it might take you a year or 2 or 3 once we've fully exited out of this to try and clean up again. So think about the repercussions of rules and regulation stuff you're going to bring in. I think is a very important element that I just want to highlight as well. So I think we've got another 15 or 20 minutes, and I think I should open up for some questions maybe at this stage. What would any specifics? I would like to ask a question maybe. I read Etienne's note here about zero micromanagement, but create the ability that all employees can make improvement proposals regardless of location in order to improve service delivery. Yes, and I think, Etienne, it's a time where people can actually engage maybe more effectively. Ideas can flow maybe quicker, and the way we're going to construct having ideas and having your staff really join in some great ideas of getting your service delivery better and to improve your service delivery. I think that's very important. Okay, I see Elmarie, you say we've employed new team members during lockdown. How do we integrate them into our culture in a remote world? Yeah, that is a new one, because that's a first for us all. We also have some people like that, and I think what it's going to be like. So how do we integrate them? It's almost an answer that I gave my kids the other day. I've got 2 boys, and they're both in high school. And I said to them, the one advantage you guys have is you will 10-to-1 be labeled one of these days as the post-corona post-coronavirus generation. And I said to them, so which means you guys will go to varsity in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now. And you're actually positioned perfectly to see how the world is changing and how that might influence what you want to study or how you want to embrace this world. So it brings me but to that statement, Elmarie, or your question is, what initiatives can we use? So we've done our first online version of our induction process last month. So we actually took people through a Zoom meeting induction, which is, any one of you has been to our offices or seen how we work there, which would be absolutely chalk and cheese apart from what the reality is. But we tried to put in that as much of the life and the fun and the games and the interventions that we do. We try to import or just put in as much of who we really are into that. But we are aware it will be different when we have a social gathering of everybody again. Hence our approach of starting a whole new induction process as we start returning to the offices. So I hope that answers you, but if anybody else wants to even post something that can answer that, I think that's part of it. So I think it's a challenging new thing for all of us. I'm trying to look at Nicholas working in a very technical space, populated with engineers and developers. How do you sell culture to people who only believe in data and numbers? Culture is the abstract. Nicholas, yes. So I think it's because there's a misunderstanding of that word culture, and we often deal with that too. Culture is the way we do things. Yes, it's the way we're going to function together is part of culture. So for a bunch of engineers, technical staff, and people like that, it is exceptionally important not to make it a fluffy thing. That's why we've tried, and we obviously don't have time for all that today, but when we take people through a whole presentation like that, we actually try and demystify culture so it becomes a very, very abstract or a very realistic concept, that it doesn't stay a very abstract concept. So I think that is something, if you can take guys like that back to values, what would be values for them to work optimally in their space, I think that would be a beginning. Maybe a point of getting them to work together. How will they work together to get the best possible outcomes, etc. That will become their culture. So I think just a short answer maybe on that, to answer that. Zane, I see you said, we realize that an online work and social community has become extremely important for our organization. The opportunities for chit chat in the coffee area, to and from meetings, etc., has to be created now online. How do you do this? Yeah, so we realized that time management, Zane, just on your statement, I think time management has shifted quite a lot. There's a lot of, it's as if you pick up, things are happening in that sense, meeting-wise, certain things are happening much faster for us. There's not that chit-chat standing around, etc. But I see now many teams are, in our context, some of our teams are now having still their Friday afternoon beer online. So they would say, guys, we're all checking in Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock. Everybody's got something to drink. Then they chit-chat. Or some of them had it at a different time. I can see some of our teams actually do make an effort to still have that, and try and just, there's somewhere a space of just, this is just a social, we just got to chat. One of the things I was reading, I'm not trying to put out any ideas, we haven't done this, but it really struck me, was all of these articles one gets during this time to read, somebody said what they now do is every time they have a meeting, they give one person or their team the chance to take his laptop, take his computer or his phone, and they have to walk through their whole house and show them where they live, which obviously now you have to wash the dishes and you have to clean your room and everything. But I thought actually it was quite a nice idea. I thought, well, now everybody, I've done it with some friends of mine. I would take my laptop and walk out the porch area here and just show them what ramps my son has built to jump his bicycle over and stuff like that. But I thought it was actually something that brought a closer connection. Now people see, Oh, so that's where you live. Oh, that's your dogs. Oh, that's the people you live with. So I think something that I like about this online working from home thing that I really like, and I see a lot of a guy like Simon Sinek's videos that he's posting at the moment is just so authentic, and I really like that. It's just such authentic stuff. It's just he's sitting there. His hair looks like he hasn't combed his hair in 3 weeks. Also haven't cut his beard in 3 weeks. And I think what's nice is people are embracing. This is you. This is me. We're at home. And this is what it looks like. And I like that. I think there's something authentic and there's something real about it. And one of our values at King Plus is be real. So I think it's a very important element that we have to look at. Greg, I see you answered Dram there, or Nicholas, you answered Nicholas as well. Please make contact with Greg and Lindsay on that point as well. Just want to see if I'm missing something here. Etienne, I think in today's climate, it is crucial to all employees have access to the company map with cover processes, strategy, customer journey maps, systems, etc. With other words, to quickly and continuously engage with employees. Yes, I agree with you, Etienne. Yeah, Gert Jacobs, good point as well. How are we dealing with work environment at home? Not everyone has internet to the level we need, home office space, etc. Yes, that is a reality. I think when just pre-lockdown, I don't know if you remember that last week prior to lockdown, some people were already starting to work. And we were actually already sending some people. That's before we knew. That was before the announcement officially was there that we are going into a lockdown. I remember I think it was almost 2 weeks prior to that, maybe. I remember Adele, who's head of our training, she actually one day said to us, she looked at her team of about 10 or 12 people, and she said, listen, all of you allowed to work from home. And she said, immediately 2 or 3 of her people gave her that sort of a weird look. So what do you mean work from home? And she said, well, you're welcome. You can go and work from home. And the one person said to her, but listen, first of all, there's 10 people living with me in a very small house. I don't want to work from home. I actually can't work. It's not positive, etc., etc. So I think, Gert, your point is a very relevant point. I think also that's something that's happened. The lockdown has almost caught us all off guard. I was saying to some people, if we could have 2 weeks, like the one guy said, Cyril just wants to give us some poser. If we can just have a poser for a week or two, I'm quite sure a lot of people actually try and what's the right word? We will actually try and fix our houses up in a way, or at least your workspace much better. You might change the way your internet works. I try to change my whole internet connection because we're living like on the edge of the city and we're not in the strongest Wi-Fi reception areas, etc. So I think if we were more prepared, all of us would do and maybe make a couple of changes to your home workspace. And I think we're going to see more of that going forward. People are going to say, listen, this working from home thing is working for me very well, but I need this X, Y, and Z. And Gert, maybe back just to your point is, I think companies are going to have to address that. We, for example, I'm not sure exactly how many dongles have we given out. It's hundreds of them. I don't want to tell you what our Vodacom bill is this month, but it's horrific. It's exceptionally high. I mean, we've got a call center of 250 people, all making data calls from home. So I think we're expecting the bill was last time way over $1 million already just for our company. There's going to be a telephone bill. So I think new solutions is also going to come. If this is becoming a bit of a more permanent thing, or a mix between the old and the new, I think the whole internet world and connectivity is going to also have a massive acceleration to address specifically those areas. So I saw Tian. Where's Tian? Tian de Jager. How do you manage software and system adoptions without letting it guide culture, but rather be guided by the current culture? Systems are supposed to help enable culture and improve overall success. Yeah, I think, Tian, so we refer to processes, systems, those things in our culture model that we actually have, which I didn't show you guys all today, we refer to them as enablers. So the biggest question you must continue to ask yourself, are those things enabling your culture or is it disabling your culture? So you must ask yourself, what are you driving? And make sure that all those things are enablers of your culture and not hindrances. They might be for a while, they might be not because we're just not used to it, etc. But as soon as we can just get into that, becoming more and more enablers again, as opposed to being disablers or standing in the way of your culture, I think that's going to be a big, important thrust.
Marno, sorry, I see there's one that was very earlier. Monique asked, what initiatives can we implement to ensure engagement and collaboration continues during remote working?
What initiatives can we implement to ensure engagement and collaboration continues during remote working? So I can say what we've tried to do, and we knew it was just a temporary solution. But one of the things is, well, from our side, from the culture perspective side, we started making small videos, and maybe some of you have seen some of them either on LinkedIn or so. We just call it a culture minute. We felt it worked quite well. We had a very, very positive response with those literally 1 minute, those culture minutes. And it was just a way of trying to continuously tell our people, we're aware of you. This is some advice for today. This is something to think about. And I also said to Gideon, I said, I think that people wants to see you, the people wants to see somebody speak to them and know that this message was specifically for them and we want to address it to them. So yes, we've put it on LinkedIn and people have asked for it everywhere and we sort of shared it wider, but it was intended for our people first. And that was something that was very positive. Other initiatives I see that is the teams trying to get together, like I said, on meetings, both socially and work-wise. And now what can we do during remote working? I think that's, Monique, that's exactly where we're at also now. We are at that place where we are literally planning. So going forward, we're going to have to put a little bit more emphasis on engaging and collaborating with people that's going to work remotely. We realize now, if we've already started identifying certain teams that's going to be working remotely for the rest of the year, definitely. Because we have to now, because of the social distancing thing, we have to we want to put our call center back into the building first. But where they used to take up one floor, the call center is going to 10 to 1 hour take up 3 floors. So we have to open up that amount of space. So finance team, ratings team, marketing team, all of them will be working remotely 10 to 1 till the end of the year. We are thinking of maybe putting in something like a hot desks and just a table where you can go into for an hour or two, make sure the distancing, all the rules are applied. But because we know lots of people wants to get back into the building and they do want to see people. They do want to really have that social experience again. I'm an extrovert. Yes, I am suffering. This is tough. So, and I want to see people. I saw Gideon also write in the Financial Mail end of last week. He was saying, man, I can't wait to just get in. He even warned all of us. He said, I'm warning you all. I'm going to give you a hug. If I'm allowed to or not, I am going to hug all of you when I see you again. Okay, he's the extreme extrovert. Okay, so I think it's really tough for him during a time like this. So I think, Monique, to answer your question, I think that is something sorry, I'm not giving you a clear answer maybe, but we are literally going to look into that as we go forward. That is a very important point.